up, everyone? We're back and we're back. The internet historians are in the building. We're in the laptops once again, recording. So yeah, guys, how's it feel to be back? Recording. How's your guys' break?
It was good.
Yeah,
it was nice. It was a nice. I mean, not that this podcast is stressful, but it's nice to not have to be like researching all the time.
Yeah,
not feel like I have homework. I don't know.
Yeah, especially during the holidays, which I personally kind of get stressed out over, with gifts and stuff like that. I mean, Alec knows when we were together in November, I was already talking about Christmas shopping. So
yeah, you were like on it.
But yeah, I mean, even though break was good, I'm excited to be back again to have something to do.
Woo woo.
Yeah,
be in the new year.
Doesn't even feel
new
like
year,
it.
new president.
But yeah, anything else new with you guys? Do you guys want to just start getting into the topic that we're?
I feel like we're so boring.
I know, right?
I don't know. We had a chill break. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's all.
Just relaxed.
That's all we wanted. Really, it was just to relax.
Yeah, it's nice to also break this up though and give us a little mind break from using so many words for 2 hours that we record. But okay, yes, let's get into our topic today. So today we're going to be discussing the history behind the movie A Beautiful Mind. So, a human drama inspired by events in the life of John Forbes Nash Jr., and in part based on the biography A Beautiful Mind by Sylvia Nassar. From the heights of notoriety to the depths of depravity, John Forbes Nash Jr. experienced it all. A mathematical genius, he made an astonishing discovery early in his career and stood on the brink of international acclaim. But the handsome and arrogant Nash soon found himself on a painful and harrowing journey of self-discovery. So, guys, I know we had some conflicting ideas or opinions on the film. So what did you guys think of it?
I didn't like it.
I liked it.
I think I'm leaning towards I didn't really care for it as much. Like I said, I feel like a million times in other things too. I feel like the first time I watched these movies, which this one was when I was in high school, I believe, I liked it at that time, but then rewatching it again, I was like, man, this movie isn't that great.
Wow. So the Academy got it wrong. Everybody got it wrong.
I mean, like I said, I think Jen did a really good job. I think she deserved her award. Oh, did she win it or did she?
She did. She won Best Actress.
Yes, she did. And I'm glad that her and Paul got together because of the movie as well.
Was it really like confirmed because of the movie?
No, that's how they met. And then later, I think they were both dating other people at the time. And then later they both were single and he confessed his love for her and was like, I think his like friend passed away and that like motivated him to finally like confess she was his like childhood crush or something.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. I was like trying to think about it. I'm like, yeah, I guess she did get into acting pretty young.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways.
But why didn't you guys like it? I mean, what's your beef?
I mean, I think it wasn't necessarily like the film itself. I think it's just, it left me very confused as to what I didn't really understand certain parts of it, I guess, like what his job actually was. Mm-hmm. I felt like something was missing maybe to me, or I don't know. But I mean, like, it's not like anything like the acting or whatever, any of that stuff or how it looked or anything. It was just like, I don't know, I just needed something more from it. Yeah, when I learned about the actual dude, I'm like, okay, yeah, they left like way a lot out.
So the scene that killed me was the stars.
Oh my God, yes! When they were like pointing, I was like, bro, that's really cheesy.
That's crazy. You guys had watched it before me, which, I mean, what else is new? I'm a procrastinator. But so Lisa, you're like, oh, we'll set your expectations low. Like, don't, And so I was like going into it like, I don't know. I mean, whatever. But I cried so many times during this movie, which like I was texting because like I was like trying to hold back. Every single time I was like, I want to save it for talking on the podcast, obviously. But I was just like, what movie were you guys watching compared to what I was watching? Because like I wouldn't say that I cry easily when when I'm watching movies, but man, I was freaking bawling my eyes out for like the last half of the movie.
That is so funny because I am the complete opposite. I cry all the time. Like
me too. I feel like I cry all the time with movies.
Yeah, and I didn't cry at all for this one. I mean, I thought the scene with the baby where he was like, kind of feeling dull and out of, you know what I mean? Like he just didn't feel the same anymore, and the baby was like crying, and he was just sitting there. Like I thought that was sad, but I guess it didn't inflict the emotion that I normally,
And one thing
get.
too, I think that is my problem, just a personal issue, is I feel like lately whenever I watch movies or TV shows or anything, I just find things to like shit on, I guess. Like
Mm.
it's like mine and Chase's favorite thing to do is talk shit about whatever it is that we're watching. So we're just like, oh no, whatever, that person's stupid. And like, so I think that's also just my fault on that, because it's like whenever I watch them, I just instinctually go to like, haha, that's stupid, or this is dumb, and da 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 da. But I don't know. I guess it's not any fault of the movie itself.
I think actually for me, I had the high expectation because I knew that it won or it was nominated for so many awards. So to me, I was like, this better be freaking good. And I guess the minute I saw Paul, okay, what's his name, Charles, come in, I was like, I already know this guy's. I knew a little bit of the background. Like I obviously knew this is about a guy with a mental illness. I guess I wasn't sure exactly which one it was, but the second I saw Paul Benedict, or no, Bennett,
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany, there you go. The second I saw him, I was like, he's not real. He's going to be a part of the story as
Oh.
a reason. Like, he's not real. And I think that kind of killed it for me. It was like a little too obvious. Like, I thought that. And then I was like, well, no, Lisa, it can't be that obvious. And then I would see all the scenes with his friends, and Charles is never there. And that's where I was like, yeah, no, he ain't real.
Yeah, and another scene too that I thought was kind of stupid, and I don't know. I feel like they were trying to make it into something more than it actually was the scene when they were in the bar, and the girl or whatever, the blonde girl and the brunette girls or whatever, and then he's like, "What if something like we're doing it for the benefit of the group versus the benefit of one?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're making something sounds way more elaborate and like insightful than it actually is. Like what you're saying literally has no meaning to it, and you're just trying to connect it to something, some other BS thing." And it made it seem, I don't know, it just made it seem like he has some kind of breakthrough, which I'm like, come on, really?
Yeah, I don't know. That has something to do with the theories that he was working on and stuff, but I'm like game theory, and I didn't look
Yeah.
too much into it because that just went over my head.
Yeah.
When I was reading something about it, about that specific scene, they were saying that that was kind of very oversimplified too, though, about
Well,
the actual
definitely.
thing.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm like, how can that give anyone a breakthrough? Like, literally, that just a dummy could figure something like that out about a girl and her friends. Like, let's all go for one instead of all going for the same exact one. Or, I don't know. It was kind of dumb to me, but
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this, which I'm sure we will talk more about, but this movie obviously was, I mean, going against Lisa's experience with this, like I'd seen like bits and pieces of it, and but I honestly didn't know anything about it. I mean, before we had this on our list, I didn't know it was a biopic. Like I didn't know anything about it. Like I knew that it was a Ron Howard movie and maybe that it won a couple awards. So I didn't really have any expectations like going into it, but now after we watched it and looking into it further, it is definitely very embellished for sure. Especially reading because it is highly rated, and what you guys hated it, so I was like I want to find somebody who didn't like it, and I want to know why, like besides the fact that you guys didn't like him as a person. But and mostly people were just mad, which like I said we'll get into that, they left some pretty important aspects of his life and did make it way more Hollywood than his life actually was. But it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like, gotta keep it interesting.
yeah. But also, I mean, like, I feel like they're capable of portraying him in a way that's more realistic in the sense of him being not that great of a guy. I don't know. I feel like in this movie, obviously, they're portraying him as someone who like overcame something and, you know, reached some type of goal. But I don't know. It's like you can do all that, but also shows that someone's kind of an asshole and a dick at the same time. I don't know. It's just like no one's
I
really.
I think they tried to show he's kind of an asshole because there were those like social scenes or like, certain moments he had with people, the interactions and stuff. But to me, um, I think it just is about the when it came out because it came out in the early 2000s, right? Like 2001.
2001.
Yeah. So I think during that time and doing something like this where they have to really have the audience understand the illness that he was going through. They did probably feel like they had to embellish a lot of things for people to understand.
Okay, so should we get into who he truly was?
Let's get into his early life because they just skip right to Princeton, and there's a bit before that. So John Forbes Nash Jr. was born on June 13th, 1928 in Bluefield, West Virginia. His father, John Forbes Nash, was an electrical engineer for the Appalachian Electric Power Company. His mother, Margaret Virginia Nash, had been a school teacher before she was married. Nash attended kindergarten and public school, and he learned from books provided by his parents and grandparents. They were very supportive of his education, which is nice. Nash's parents pursued opportunities to supplement his education and arranged for him to take advanced mathematics courses at a local community college during his final year of high school. He attended Carnegie Institute of Technology, which is now Carnegie Mellon University, through a full benefit of, get this. I was like, when I was reading all this, I went off and I was like quizzing JC. The scholarship that he went to school was called the George Westinghouse Scholarship. Whoa! He initially majored in chemical engineering. He switched to a chemistry major and eventually, at the advice of his teacher, to mathematics. After graduating in 1948 at age 19, with both a BS and MS in mathematics, Nash accepted a scholarship to Princeton University, where he pursued further graduate studies in mathematics. So he's smart, obviously. He ahead of everybody else. Nash's advisor and former Carnegie professor Richard Duffin wrote a letter of recommendation for Nash's entrance to Princeton, stating, quote, "He is a mathematical genius." That's all he wrote. So let him in. Nash was also accepted at Harvard University. However, the chairman of the mathematics department at Princeton offered him the John S. Kennedy Fellowship, convincing Nash that Princeton valued him more. Further, he considered Princeton more favorably because of its proximity to his family in Bluefield, West Virginia. At Princeton, he began work on his equilibrium theory, later known as the Nash equilibrium. In 1951, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, hired Nash as a CLE Moore instructor in the mathematics facility, which they show in the movie is basically they hire him to do research, but he also is, in his view, obligated to teach as well. In 1958, Nash earned a tenured position at MIT, and his first signs of mental illness were evident in early 1959. At this time, his wife was pregnant with their first child. He resigned his position as a member of the MIT mathematics faculty in the spring of 1959, and his wife had admitted him to McLean Hospital for treatment of schizophrenia that same year. So due to the stress of dealing with this illness, Nash and Alicia, his wife, divorced in 1963. After his final hospital discharge in 1970, Nash lived in Alicia's house. She later remarried as a boarder. This stability seemed to help him, and he learned how to consciously discard his paranoid delusions. He stopped taking psychiatric medication and was allowed by Princeton to audit classes, which they show in the movie. One point, though, so I was looking to see, because obviously, well, not obviously, so he and Alicia died in 2015 in a car accident coming back from Oslo, where he was accepting the Abel Award, I believe it was called. Mm-hmm. Which is sad. So this movie came out in 2001. So I was like, I want to know what his opinion was on this movie. And basically, he only had really two qualms with the movie. One being that he never suffered from visual hallucinations. Yeah. He only had auditory hallucinations, which I thought was kind of cool, because the way that, obviously they had to be visual for the movie storytelling, otherwise it would have been really confusing. But the way that Ron Howard did it is that every time he's having a delusion or hallucination, you hear it first before he sees it. So as a clue that was made up in his mind. And then I
didn't notice that at all.
Yeah, and then his second problem was that in the movie, they have him on the psychiatric medication for a long time, and he goes off of it and then goes back on it and blah, blah, blah. But he stopped taking it and got better, went into remission is what they call it, with the hallucinations by talking himself out of it, which is kind of, they mentioned it in the movie, which is kind of true. He kind of reasoned with it and was able to suppress the hallucinations. But he was like very adamant that he never went back on to the medication. But
But I read that he did take medication, like he was still taking medication, or he like maybe started taking like a new medication that came out, and it just didn't have the type of side effects that were giving that he got previously. Like, I saw somewhere he didn't like how it looked like the medication was a bad thing, because it does kind of make it seem like that, like the
No,
medication
I
made
think
him
that was the
seem.
director
That's
who thought that.
yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
The
That's what I was
director
about
said
to say.
that?
Yeah.
The writer and
Or
the
yeah, whoever
movie
it was.
company,
Oh,
yeah, the writer and the movie company, they did end up keeping him or putting him back on the medication because they didn't want to put out this like message that you can get better on your own, because sometimes you can't and you should probably stay
Yeah,
on
I
the
was like, I don't know if he
medication.
got better. I think even how it was portrayed in the film, he just kind of just ignored it and was like,
Yeah.
this isn't gonna affect me right now.
Yeah, that's kind of why they say he went into remission or
Yeah.
whatever, because technically he could still come back, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, he continued to work on mathematics and was eventually allowed to teach again. In the 1990s, Alicia and John resumed their relationship, remarrying in 2003. So we also had down of like what he did for a living, and maybe this will kind of explain, Nicole, like what his job actually was,
Yes.
kind of. Unlike in the movie, he never actually worked for the Pentagon. He was never called in, like in the movie where he has to decipher the big wall of code. In real life, he spent his years between Princeton and MIT as a consultant for the RAND Corporation in California. The RAND Corporation is an American nonprofit global policy think tank created in 1948 by Douglas Aircraft Company to offer research and analysis to the United States Armed Forces. It's financed by the U.S. government and a private endowment. It's kind of for the government, but really more for this one company that works with the government.
But he was deciphering codes, or no? Because that's what because I'm like, the one scene where he's like going in there, he's like, oh, what is this for, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the person's like, just like kind of brushing him off that he's even asking questions. And then, because they go from that scene to him going back to his office, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, wait, is he just being kind of, what is it? I can't even think of the word right now. Oh my God. Like loaned out, I guess, to this company every now and place every now and then to break codes, and then he goes back to his real job or whatever. And I was like, what is that job that he was at that office for? Like kind of a contractor, I guess.
Like a contractor consulting.
I was like, what?
Oh, I was gonna say, in the movie though, I know that some scenes, like, it's not about the visual hallucination, it's about false memories, or like or they call them delusions. So, even though like the scene where they're getting chased and shot at and stuff like that, like that probably none of that probably happened. He probably didn't even get into a car. It's just like a false memory. So maybe that could be like what you're saying, how it's like, how is it?
Yeah.
He went to one office and the other office. It's just a false memory that they're just trying to.
Well, I was kind of thinking that, at least in the movie, the times where he'd go to the drop-off point and there was the car and it would speed away, I think it was Saul following him.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and he did say that he followed him to that mailbox or whatever.
Yeah, he wanted to see where
so
he was
just
going.
saw that and like interpreted it some different way in his mind, or
well, yeah, the paranoia.
Yeah. And and even just like his in the movie, his like paranoia about the government and Soviet Russia and all that stuff. I mean, that's pretty loose too, because in reality, his delusions, they were like US government based, but he also had a lot of like extraterrestrial delusions. So it wasn't like strictly, oh, they're out to get me type of a thing. It was paranoid schizophrenia. For what I could find for the whole cryptology thing, it was kind of hard to find because a lot of it is classified information, even though he was working for the RAND Corporation and not like directly with the government. They did declassify some of his work that he did with them in the 50s, and he was like, it's really, his work is like, it goes over my head. Like, I wouldn't call myself a dummy, but like
I mean,
So
hello, I didn't even understand at all what his job was. So
yeah. so so he did do like some, I mean, even if it was on his own or what, what they were looking for um with the Rand company or whatever, there was some like cryptology and encryption type theories and things that he was working on, but I couldn't find anything specifically, and I don't know if it's because it's still classified information or yeah, nobody knows. But there are some theories and things that he did come up for encryption that they still use today. So I guess he was just kind of like a trailblazer in that.
how does his mathematics relate to the code breaking or cryptology? I don't know. I guess, yeah, my brain capacity
I
can't.
mean, have you
I don't even
seen?
know what's on my freaking screen, you know?
Well, because like I mean, there's a million different types of code and stuff, and I'm sure there are plenty of not lines of code, I mean wrong type of code, but types of code that involve, you have to do this math or whatever, because I mean, at least in the scene where he was trying to crack whatever it was, it seemed like he was like going over the numbers in his head in a certain way
Yeah.
to single out numbers to come up with the coordinates. So I'm sure there are plenty of like types of
Yeah.
codes
I was just
that
like, hmm.
involve math.
Okay, Lisa,
Delve deeper into
let's talk about homeboy schizophrenia.
Well, so as Alex said, John was like 30 years old when he started experiencing symptoms of schizophrenia, and that included hallucinations and delusions. And as we said, it was mostly auditory and not visual. And like I said too, yeah, when I looked into it, because to me, I guess I did take the movie a little more literal. Like I really thought these were all visual hallucinations, and these are all things that you can make up in your mind. And from research from like I was just watching a YouTube video of this girl who does have schizophrenia. She thinks that like, yeah, obviously it's like, bedazzled with the extent that they would go. But what does make sense is the delusions and how it's called, like she called it a false memory, but it is categorized as a delusion when that type of extent of something happening, with even the scene where he was like walking out to his like yard and all of a sudden the lights are all shining on him and Parcher is like, I'm glad to have you back, soldier, or whatever, it's like you can't really have that, or I think that's like too big of a hallucination to have, so it makes more sense it was a delusion. It's
that.
kind of, I didn't realize like hallucination and delusion are kind of like almost intertwined in a sense. It's like there's delusion and there's hallucination. He would mail letters to the embassy in DC declaring that the Communist Party were establishing a government. And then in 1959, he was giving an American Mathematical Society lecture at the Columbia University. And his lecture basically didn't make any sense. And that's when his friends and colleagues realized something was up. So in April of 1959, he was hospitalized and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was released in May, but in 1961, he was admitted to the New Jersey State Hospital in Trenton. And over the next 9 years, he spent periods of time in psychiatric hospitals where he received both antipsychotic medication and insulin shock therapy. And then after 1970, he was never committed to a hospital again. And I feel like that sounds pretty common with a lot of people who are diagnosed with this mental illness. I think it does sound like illness that doesn't take one try to, figure out.
I'm just like thinking like was when his friends he said like kind of saw something that was wrong with him and that's when they kind of thought okay something's wrong. I was just thinking because in the film they make him seem very kind of antisocial and kind of awkward and so I'm like thinking does that have anything to do with his schizophrenia
Yeah.
as well and like maybe
Probably.
was that like
Mhm.
a precursor to kind of show that
I mean, I
or
would assume just his intelligence probably is more so on his personality
Yeah,
than
maybe
the
he just thinks
schizophrenia,
everyone's too
but
dumb to talk to.
that's true.
I was reading he was always kind of socially weird, awkward. I guess he would whistle all the time in the hallways at Princeton. He would walk away in the middle of a conversation. Again, it's like kind of weird to know because he started showing symptoms like after that and like his early life, he was already kind of socially
that's
awkward.
like, what if just like later on it just got worse, and that's when people are like, oh, he's not just weird, he's also like he's doing extraness now, kind of the thing, and that's when,
I see what you're saying.
yeah, like that's, I was like, was he always schizophrenic, or like that's what I'm saying, I don't even
No,
know.
Probably.
I don't think so because I was looking it up and they say that most people show symptoms in like their 20s, like later in life. It's very, very rare to have like a kid be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I mean, it's not like it's impossible. It's just very rare. So that means a lot of people develop it later in life. And so that's why I don't think he's always had it. I think he was always socially awkward. And it makes sense that like maybe they thought this paranoia is just like a part of his socially awkwardness. But I do think that how do I say this? Because when I was like reading or watching the YouTube video of this lady who also has schizophrenia, she did kind of say it's hard for them to read certain social cues, So
A lot of it seemed kind of reminded me of like high functioning like autism or Asperger's or something like that. Because you just it makes sense to you, but in your surroundings, it's not the right way to go about things. But as long as it logically makes sense to you, you're gonna do it, type of a thing.
I'm gonna go into the treatment, and I'll do my best to describe these. So first of all, I'm going to go with the antipsychotic medication. So it's basically a medication that is primarily used to manage psychosis. And so with psychosis, that's when they really kind of reach the really, really bad where they don't even know reality versus delusion anymore. It's all delusion. It's no more reality. So they call that psychosis. So it's to manage psychosis, mostly in schizophrenia, but it's also used in a range of other psychotic disorders. I think one of them being bipolar disorder. It's the key component in schizophrenia treatment recommendations, and it's the main aim is to reduce psychosis. So then it kind of like reduces those delusions and hallucinations. There is mixed evidence if it kind of also provides symptoms like lack of emotion, apathy, lack of interest in social interactions. And so we do see that in the movie, how, like I said, he had that moment with the baby where he's like crying and he's just kind of like staring off into the distance, like not even really acknowledging that. And when he realizes it, it's like, he's already having the baby taken away like by his wife. And it was kind of weird. It seemed like, oh, the medication's doing that to you and it's kind of bad, like in the movie at least. But this is something that a lot of people with this disorder, they have to take to help manage these delusions and hallucinations. But I do see that as a side effect. Like I think you're going from kind of almost like, it is like, we've all done this where we want to go on a diet. And like for me, I'm always like, I'm going to cut out sugar. And then the day like I want sugar, I'm like, and what do people do? Like, how do you live without this sugar? How do you not eat like, chocolate or ice cream? Like, and I think it's kind of that again, like they have to learn how to live a new lifestyle again. And I think that, and then with this medication, I think it makes sense for the negative side effects to be apathy and stuff like that. But again, the evidence is mixed. So the next treatment, which is the cray-cray one, is the insulin shock therapy. So it's a treatment that's not really used anymore. It was primarily used in the 1940s to the 1950s, and it pretty much died out by the 60s. And now it's just the medication that they use, and they don't do this anymore. Oh God. Basically, they would inject you with insulin for 6 days a week for about 2 months, and then they would gradually put more and more and more until you go into a coma. And then that was basically like the treatment, because I don't know. I'm not going to use the actual technical terms, but basically they want you to go into this coma. It's supposed to level out the shit, and then you're supposed to recover. So
yeah,
it
a lot
obviously,
of chemicals
yeah.
and brain words.
And I ain't gonna try. It's just supposed to be some sort of therapy. So sometimes when some people were in this coma, they would have a seizure, and they would think, "Oh yeah, this is good stuff. It's working." And then I know it's like, really, and sometimes, and so every hospital does this differently, which is why it's not like this is how it's done. And I keep saying sometimes because each place did it differently. But anyway, sometimes when the patients would have a seizure, they would give them the electroshock therapy. And I was like, all right, okay, let's just add something else on top of it. And I think the reason why to that is because I mean, I guess I don't know if it's still believed these days, but it's the fact that the shock can help the brain, and the seizure is related to the brain. So they're more like trying to treat the seizure, I believe, when it comes to the coma seizure, and then they just put the electricity in as well. So yeah, it was a pretty intense treatment. Basically these patients were very, very, very well cared for. They were like segregated from the other patients because they literally had to be watched like 24/7 by the nurses. And then if they wanted to do activities, like the nurses are basically like accompanying them while they go for a walk or solve a puzzle or something like that. It's just because some like anything could happen. I mean, they were really at risk for a lot of things. So
Code red.
they had to be watched 24/7. And it was weird because they like were trying to say that it works, it helps, but it was like, really, if the reason why they didn't know for sure if it worked or not is because a lot of the people who recovered were either diagnosed later in life, and I guess a lot of people who were diagnosed later in life do go into remission, or like more likely to go into remission, or like they diagnosed it really early. So again, you know, what's the truth? I don't know. Well, the truth is, it's out, so it ain't working, honestly.
Yeah, from what I read, it was like 50%
Yeah.
effective.
All right. Third treatment, and this is what I made up, is the community. All right, guys. So it's not like a medical, like obviously they don't prescribe this to you, but I think one of the biggest things that helped John get to remission is the fact that he had supportive people around him, like his wife, how even though they divorced, she still stood by him and allowed him to move into his place in the 70s. And then his colleagues helping him with getting a job and also being really protective of him, and just like making sure that he always had that support and positivity around him. I think that really helps you recover, because I can't imagine I'm sure, like being diagnosed with an illness like this, you already feel outcasted, and to feel even more outcasted by the people around you, I think that would of course have much more of a negative effect to you. And to have that support and positivity in your community makes a lot of sense that that helped with his recovery. Even though we don't think he's the greatest person, I do think these treatments are pretty intense, and I do
Yeah.
think that it is a good thing that he was able to like go into remission. I think people who maybe are diagnosed, it'd be nice to know that someone has been able to make it to remission and like look up to that at least.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about his personal life here. There's kind of a lot going on with him personally and his personal relationships. So first, I want to talk about this affair, I guess you can call it, that he had previously before he met his wife.
Which people are mad that they completely left it out of the
Yeah.
movie, but
I know,
can't
that's why
blame
I
them.
didn't I was shocked when I read this after watching the movie, like, because in the film they make it seem like Alicia is that's
The
the
one
only
and
person.
only.
Well, and to me, I don't know, when I watched the film I was like, oh, that's the only woman he's probably ever been with, because of how awkward he was, and he was even saying it in the film, like how he doesn't know how to talk to women, I guess.
Hmm.
Even though I know personally that the movies don't correctly portray a real life human, but how they like homeboy, they really like left out the fact that he was kind of a douchebag in it, specifically to the women he had like relationships with. At least in my opinion, that's kind of where I see that he kind of was really flawed. So of course in the movie we see that he married Alicia, but before that he had a relationship with a woman named Eleanor Steer. She was a nurse in Boston, and in 1953 they had a son together named John Steer, so named after John
More
Nash.
Johns.
Yeah, so
I know
that's
both
one
his sons'
John.
names are John.
Exactly. So you
Yep.
gotta pay attention here. John Steer is his first son, and once John was born, John kind of pulled a dick move and basically decided that he didn't want to be with Eleanor or help her out in any way because he kind of felt that they were beneath him. Um, and so he basically just left her. So because Nash refused to care for Eleanor or his first son, John, the first son had to be placed in foster care for a short time, and Eleanor hired a lawyer to get Nash to help pay for child support. Obviously, Nash and John, they didn't have much of a relationship. They met a few times over the years, and I think after like a 17-year stint of them not having any type of relationship or any communication, they did meet up again. And during this time that they met up, Nash criticized his first son, John, for becoming a nurse, which I thought was kind of cute because he followed in his mom's footsteps of becoming a nurse, and told him that he thought it would be beneficial for his son, which is the second John, to meet his less intelligent older brother, which I was like, really? It's kind of messed up right there. And that's also really bold for you to like say to one of your kids that, hey,
Or is
like,
it the schizophrenia? No, just kidding.
I mean, that's also true too, but I don't know. I just thought that was really kind of bold of him to say.
I
And it's
mean, Alicia did graduate from MIT as well, so she's smart.
yeah, but I mean, being a nurse, you're not a dummy either.
True,
So,
true.
but I don't know. Also thought it was interesting that his second son, John Nash Jr., or the third or whatever, it also had schizophrenia, was diagnosed with
Mm-hmm.
schizophrenia, which I was like, that's so interesting that the son that he like put more of himself into also had schizophrenia versus the one who he didn't have really any relationship with.
After John and Alicia passed away, like obviously they were concerned about like how they were gonna take care of their John, or they called him Johnny too.
Okay, Johnny. I'm gonna
Me
start calling
too.
him that too. I'm like, there's too many Johns.
Yeah, they called him Johnny. So they were concerned about like how they were going to take care of Johnny after they passed away. Unfortunately, they didn't come up with a plan. And then they had their untimely death. But he is doing really well, and he has a
How
list
old
of.
was he when they
He's
died?
like in his 50s, I think
Yeah,
he's
he
in
was
his
pretty old
50s.
because they
Yeah.
were
Okay.
82 and 86 when they
That's what I was
passed
saying.
away, so he was an adult.
Okay,
But
that's what I was
I
like.
think as a mother, you're always going to be concerned, right? So,
Yeah.
Oh, because he
and
had schizophrenia too. Okay,
yeah,
sorry, I
exactly,
forgot that part. Even though I literally just said it, I already forgot it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense now.
Anyway, yeah, I don't think is in remission, to be. I don't know, I didn't look that up, but I do know that after they passed away, they were like, how are you doing? And everyone's like, he's actually doing really well, and he has a list of phone numbers to call if he needs, like, if there's an emergency. First number, I think, is his first number, one of the numbers at least, and one of the top three numbers is his older brother. I was like,
That's
cute.
cute.
Yeah.
So now we can go on to Alicia. So in the movie, we see that they met because she was one of his students, which this is true. He was her teacher for a short time. And also one thing I didn't realize was that she was only 4 years younger than him. I thought there was like more of a bigger age gap because she was a student, but
No, he graduated early, remember?
oh
He was already ahead of his
yeah.
class.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, how the hell does that work out? Thank you. Okay, because I was like, what the hell when I saw that? They got married in 1957, and 1 year after they got married, she got pregnant with their son, John Nash, Johnny. Their relationship wasn't as cutesy as it was in the film either. It was lightweight toxic, and by lightweight, I mean that it was. Very much so toxic. So Nash wished to show everyone that he was the master of this gorgeous young woman and that she was his slave. He did so by throwing her to the ground during a mathematics department picnic and placing his foot on her neck. In 1967, they got divorced. Her papers stated that Nash blamed her for twice committing him to a mental institution. He had moved into another room and refused to have sex with her for more than 2 years. In 1970, Nash moves back in with Alicia, and she was basically his caregiver, as was already mentioned. And then after he won the Nobel Prizes, when they rekindled the relationship, and in 2005, they remarried.
Which I thought was interesting. I was like, coming for him after he wins the Nobel
I
Prize. I see you,
know.
Alicia.
But like, oh my God, I just don't know if I was in her position, if I would be able to, I don't know. But then again, I don't know. Maybe she did feel some kind of something and she understood that something was going on with him mentally. But I'm just like, damn.
I wonder if it's a sign of the times as well, because she did get pregnant pretty shortly after they got married. So I wonder if there's a little bit of like maybe she didn't want to be a single mom, you know.
Yeah, that's true too. But I don't know. It just shows to me a lot the toxicity in him a little bit, just because I feel like continuously, like the first relationship, and then with this one, there's just like, what is it?
A habit.
Yeah, I guess habit of him just kind of thinking that he's better than the person that he's with, even though he was obviously he left his first one because he thought she was beneath him, but obviously he thought Alicia was better because maybe she went to a better school or whatever the reason was.
I mean, it kind of lightweight sounds like he's like a narcissist because he cares about that type
I
of
mean, yeah, very
image.
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I read what is it? Not eulogy, obituary that Princeton wrote when they passed away. And it had mentioned, or they had interviewed a lot of the professors that he worked with at Princeton. and had some quotes from them, and it said that he pretty much was like, which they show in the movie, he's very much down on himself all the time and just wanted recognition so badly. And there was like a dramatic like 180 once he won the Nobel Prize of like how he saw himself, how much, you know, like how much better he felt about himself because like he was justified, I guess, in his intelligence, I want to say. Like people were finally recognizing it, and he felt like maybe, I don't know, some of the pressure could be let off at this point because he finally won an award for what, you know, his like life's work. But yeah, they said that it like really like just changed him into a completely different person once he was finally like recognized with these awards. So I'm wondering if like the abuse and like that type of like looking down on her, I wonder if that also was a sign of the times because of just where women were in the 40s and 50s. Like I'm just wondering if that was like kind of ingrained in his brain and like the way that he thought, where he had to like math out things and like reason things, but like he was raised that way. So I don't know. I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
I don't know. It was just messed up, and I was kind of shocked by it because I was fooled by the movie and thinking that they were just in a really good relationship and whatnot, but it wasn't so. And then another thing I was shocked by is what I'm about to talk about right now. Okay. So, last thing I want to mention is his homosexual relations that he had. Also, I want to briefly mention that I think it was Alicia and maybe her son or one of the other people kind of deny that this is things that actually happened, or that they're not, I guess, as what is it? And I don't know, not intense, but it's like, oh, like people are playing it up bigger than it actually was, kind of a thing. So they kind of were denying it in some regard, like, which I mean, it kind of makes sense because, like you said, he's trying to make himself bigger than he or who he thinks he should be. So it makes sense that they would kind of deny it. So, Nash had reoccurring liaisons with other men. As an undergraduate, he once climbed into a friend's bed while the friend was sleeping and made a pass at him. Nash also made a sexual overture toward John Milnor, a fellow mathematician with whom Nash lived one summer while working for the Rand Corporation. What Nash felt toward Milnor may have been something very close to love. Nash's first loves were one-sided infatuations with other men. He once kissed another friend, Donald Newman, on the mouth. According to Newman, he tried fiddling around with me. I was driving my car when he came on to me. Nash also had special friendships, in his own words, with two men. One of these was Nash's first experience of mutual attraction. The other was they were friends and then more than friends. And then also that something was like, when I read this other random sentence relating to his son and his like gay awakening or something like that, it was like, what is this sentence referring to? Because when, you know, I had mentioned that they went like 17 years without seeing each other, and then when they also kind of met up again, Nash said something like, oh, I thought this could have like a possibility for my like gay awakening or something along those lines. I could be paraphrasing what he said, but when I read that, I was like, what? But they didn't explain what he meant by that. So I was like, what is he talking about right here? Like, he's talking about meeting his son and then
Becoming more maternal.
I don't know, but I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, that's your son. So why are you thinking of stuff like that?
That's what I'm saying, though. It's just like maybe just like it's so ingrained in him, like the roles of, you know, the sexes, that like maybe he saw it that way, that he would need to like get more in touch with that side of him just so he could feel something for his kid. I don't know.
But I was like, what it just threw me because they didn't explain anything about why he would say that. They just kind of threw that sentence in there when they were talking about his relationship with his older son. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, those were kind of the relations that he had with dudes, or what I think, like I said, it was all one-sided. So it was just kind of like his attraction towards men. And I don't know if this also had to play in the part that he just didn't know how to act around people.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, like if he felt something towards them or whatever, I don't know.
All I had to say was, I don't think he's ever denied it. Has he? Like, right?
Well, I think, I
didn't
don't
see
know.
him
From what
say
I read,
anything
it was
about
like
it.
Alicia. Well, I don't think they denied it. I think they were saying that they like people, like the reports of people saying this are like things that were like exaggerated.
But he saw a lot of experiences and behaviors as an experiment. So, I mean, he was constantly learning and constantly
Yeah.
studying, and I don't know, or maybe, I mean, which I was going to say earlier, maybe it was just like I was going to say early form, but I mean, early because I feel like not people didn't recognize this branch of sexuality, but like maybe it's just like an early form of like what is it, pansexuality or something like that, where you are in love with or like the person or attracted to the person for their personality, for their intellect or whatever, and don't really see gender.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe he made a pass at these guys because he admired them.
That's what I was gonna say too. I was like, maybe he felt like some type of deep love for them, just as because like they were friends and they were his roommates, so maybe he just thought like, oh, this is what you do with someone that you have a very deep love for, or
Yeah.
But about that arrest. In 1954, Nash was arrested for indecent exposure in a bathroom in Santa Monica, which cost him his position at Rand. He told his bosses that he was merely observing behavioral characteristics. I'm like, sure. Me too, sure. No, in the LA Times, it says, contrary to Times of London's reference to Nash's numerous sexual liaisons, Nash is not gay. While he had intense emotional relationships with other men in his 20s, no one I interviewed claimed, much less provided evidence, that Nash had ever had sex with another man. True, Nash was arrested for a police trap in the men's room in Santa Monica in 1954 at the height of McCarthy era. Rand Corporation, where he was working, stripped him of his security clearance and fired him, ignoring Nash's complete denial and saying it didn't matter whether the police were telling the truth or not. The charge, indecent exposure, was dropped.
One thing too, I wanted to talk about that I had to look up immediately after watching the thing is if that pen ceremony was real. And it
Which made
wasn't.
me cry at the end. I was bawling my eyes out at that part. I was just like, oh my God, they admire him so much.
Yeah, but yeah,
I was
it's not
cringing.
real.
No.
I guess Princeton doesn't have any type of ceremony even similar to that. And I was like, they have to have something, right? Just any type of, because well, at first I didn't get the symbolism behind. I mean, I knew that there was like, they're doing it to pay the respect, but I was like, oh, what does the pen specifically like represent? And then people, like, I was just reading something online, like why they use it is just basically, like thought process, and that's what they use when they're in their office coming up with their ideas and shit like that. So that's probably why they used it as like a symbol for that. But I was like, oh dang, this shit's not, it's not real at all though. I don't know. He was a very complicated man. I think in
Yeah.
the film they definitely, as they say, oversimplified his life, and they definitely brought out like the more positive attributes in him. And I think that's also something kind of that they not have to do, but it's like, especially when you're talking about something as sensitive as like a mental disorder, and that's already very stigmatized in of itself. I think it's kind of more to their benefit, or like people who have mental
Yeah, I was going to say,
abilities to kind of be portrayed in more of a way that's not as negative, because I mean, even now a lot of people who are like homeless are people that have
of
like some type of, like,
schizophrenia.
schizophrenia, and I don't know, so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, something I wanted to bring up is how he's kind of like a privileged white guy, and it's kind of hard to almost relate because, yeah, it's great that he was able to go into remission, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that he's very, very intelligent. Like, obviously, he, graduated at a young age, went to Princeton, got a Nobel Prize, and he was able to get this medical treatment, and also with his talent, he was able to have network or like have a network of people in high places that kind of was helping him with all of this. Like, not a lot of people have that privilege in their life and who are diagnosed with this illness. And that's why they aren't able to get into remission, is because, with something like this, you need that type of medication and community. And if you don't have that, it's very, very difficult to.
Yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about like his personal life, and when he moved back in with Alicia. Yeah, I know, right? With Alicia, is like you said earlier, like it's probably helpful to him that he had all these people to kind of fall back on. And I think that is one of the main reasons they credited with him kind of going into remission, was that he had someone to care for him, because I think they said that pretty much if he didn't live with Alicia, that he would have kind of been
Homeless.
not like homeless basically, like he wouldn't have really anywhere to go. So it's like really a good thing that she kind of took him in, because for that reason, he was able to do better. If he didn't live with her, he would have probably like gotten worse, and.
Well, okay. So what I was going to say real quick, I wanted to jump in, is that I wouldn't even consider it privilege, because this was the 40s and 50s and they were state-run hospitals and they weren't good hospitals. Just coming from someone who lived next to an abandoned one, I had to look into it because it was horrifying me every day of my life. But yeah, these were state run and city run. They weren't great places, so I wouldn't really consider it privilege because a lot of people were thrown into these places against their will, like he was technically. So I would say it's more a government failure than anything. At least now the government is failing us in healthcare, and that's really what it is.
I mean, true with the healthcare, but I mean, he did have a lot of people around him, you know.
That is true.
So
he was privileged in family and friends.
Yeah, but on top of that, he has this movie about him, you know, and
one point that I wanted to bring up was the guy that came and told him that he was getting a Nobel Prize. That was actually a thing that really happened. They did send a mathematician to essentially like check him out and make sure that he was cool
that I wasn't
enough
surprised by
to
because
and then he actually didn't give a speech like he did in the movie either at the end.
No, he didn't. He only gave one at a dinner or something at Princeton. But yeah, in that scene when they're walking outside, he's like, "Oh yeah, we're using all your stuff for this and this and this." So I mean, he kind of he glosses over it because, as we said 25 times, it's deep.
Thanks for joining us this week on The Internet Historians. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and give us a rating. We would also love to connect with you, so give us a follow on Instagram where we give sneak peeks into subjects of our episodes. And next week, we'll be discussing P.T. Barnum from the movie The Greatest Showman. So don't forget to tune in. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.